All right, folks, it is a pleasure as always to have you with us here. We're going to be talking with Mr. Mike Coughlin of HalfGuarded.com, probably our favorite guest we have on the show periodically from time to time. Now, normally we talk about things like MMA and politics and the slow and gradual erosion of free expression in the United States, but today we want to talk about something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, and that is comic book nerddom. More specifically, the latest film from the DC Cinematic Universe, Justice League, which we both have some quibbles about. And we'll talk about that and kind of compare and contrast where the DC Cinematic Universe is compared to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how the overall movies can improve. And at the end, we'll talk about Infinity War and what's coming up with the Fox deal with Disney. So, Mr. Coughlin, I'll allow you to introduce yourself or plug whatever you need to plug, and we'll get rolling.
Well, Mr. J. Swift there, it's a pleasure to be here with you again. And, halfguarded.com, that's the only thing anybody anywhere ever needs to know. And for a little while now, you and I are going to talk nothing but nerdy comic book stuff. But that's a good thing, because nerdy comic books run the world right now. They are the most powerful economic force in all of entertainment. The geek have truly inherited the earth.
You know what? I was going to go straight to that biblical pun, but you beat me to it. I think it's also important to say that this is the second time we're doing this interview. We recorded like an hour of audio last night, but for whatever reason, the computer was muted because of a Windows 10 update. So we lost everything. And it's a shame because we have so much great material in there. We cured cancer. We figured out the fundamentals of quantum theory. We found out who really shot JFK, but it's all lost forever, so 'tis a pity.
Well, it's just blame net neutrality. If Trump hadn't screwed around, we would have made it work.
That's true. Now, did you hear about I'm already diverging here, but there was like a reporter in New York who was so upset about net neutrality that he drove drunk to a hospital and tried to break into a teenager's room.
I did not hear that. That's a very interesting way to protest internet freedom.
Well, I mean, what do we have to live for now that these very vague things that don't even have effect yet are going to take over the internet?
Yeah, I do remember the old days back in 2015. The internet was just horrible. It just sucked. Couldn't watch anything. Netflix didn't exist.
Yeah.
Then Obama came along, and after decades, everybody going, oh, there we go. That's how the internet can work. And then Trump ruined it.
It truly was. No more funny cat videos. We're just hosed.
But I'm lucky for everybody listening. We have overcome all of this. And now we are winners.
We are, and this is the first step in the healing process. We can all agree. So I guess we should probably talk about Justice League here. We both agree that it's not a very good movie. So before we start talking about all the things the movie screwed up and got wrong, I think it's only fair we talk about the very few good things Justice League actually has going for it, and then kind of compare and contrast this movie with Batman vs. Superman, its predecessor. So Mike, was there any positives you can say about Justice League, especially compared to BVS?
Yeah, the only positive was the one scene where Superman beat the hell out of the entire Justice League. That was very entertaining. It showed the incredible power and more the importance of Superman. But outside of that, no, nothing else. It was just a gigantic piece of garbage that no one should ever watch if they have self-respect.
I thought it was a incrementally better movie than Batman vs. Superman. I thought the tone was a little bit better. I thought the characterizations were a little bit more on the mark with the comics. Like I thought the best part was when Superman's resurrected and he just goes bananas on everybody. He punches Wonder Woman like 20 feet underground. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. But there's just so many structural problems in the movie, and we're going to get into a whole bunch of them here in a minute. But would you say there's any particular thing that stands out as the number one reason why this movie just totally underwhelmed everybody?
I really do think there's something to the fact that it just wasn't a good story. Just Steppenwolf shows up on Earth. He doesn't really seem all that powerful. You know, Aquaman fights him and kind of beats his ass for a little bit. The Amazons, they kind of hold their own. He kind of beats them. He mostly just grabs the mother boxes, then runs away. He has this, I want these mother boxes. Man, I like my 3 boxes. And nobody really knows what the boxes do. Nobody knows why they're powerful. Somebody just says, oh, they have a lot of power to them. And we're all supposed to go, oh, okay. It's like the laziest MacGuffin of all time. And then before he could do anything with all this power, the Justice League just shows up and beats him. And that's it. It was the most straightforward, basic thing. It'd be kind of like making a movie out of the first Iraq War. Be like, okay, well, Saddam Hussein screwed around. America showed up, kicked his ass, and that was it. Okay, maybe it's satisfying if you're a fan of the winners, but stories need to have drama and conflict and doubt, and this had none of that.
And we were talking about this in their prototype video. I just don't think that using Steppenwolf as the villain was the right call. I still think it should have been Lex Luthor, maybe starting then Justice League and revolving around that like they did at the end of the movie with the Stinger. But more to the point, when you compare DC to Marvel, it just seems like you don't really have that many top-tier Omega-level villains to use. And I think that of all the DC villains they could have used, using Steppenwolf was probably like one of the absolute worst. That's like barely a step above Captain Cold.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a very good... He's a nothing villain. And even... Here's the thing, though. Even if say he was a great villain. Say he was like the Joker level, awesome and legendary. The way he was used would never let that come across. He was just... Again, he just showed up, wanted to collect 3 boxes, 3 cubes. He grabbed the cubes, and then he lost. It doesn't matter if you're... I mean, honestly, they could have had Batman as the villain, and if he did all that, you'd be like, oh, that was kind of uninspired. What a loser.
And, looking at the structure of the film itself, it's kind of a combination of 2 different visions. Zack Snyder Stoffer's the director and the writer. Then, I believe his daughter committed suicide, so he left the film. In comes Joss Whedon to do a little bit of rewriting, a little bit of redirecting and refilming. So to me, it kind of felt uneven. At times I felt like it was 2 different movies kind of merged together. So do you kind of think that it gelled as well, or do you kind of feel it was a little iffy as well?
Well, I mean, obviously Snyder's daughter saw the first cut and couldn't live with herself, knowing that her dad was that bad at directing a movie. We've seen Snyder. He's done 2 movies now. He did Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. This was a little more lighthearted than those, but it still had his fingerprints everywhere. I believe that most of the film was actually already shot, so Whedon was just kind of doing some, reshoots and editing it. Joss Whedon's basically a little beta male who likes to use his power in Hollywood to, I love you girls, and then he sleeps with them, but he still can direct a good comic book movie. I don't want to judge him too much. I don't know what he could have done, but look, the whole thing was it was a mess from the beginning. It was a very good example of too many chefs in the kitchen. And unfortunately, the lead chef happened to be Zack Snyder, which is kind of like saying that you're going to go to some fancy French restaurant and they use a fry cook from McDonald's.
So what was in the movie about the owls? Because, in hindsight, that's kind of like a prototype for what Justice League turned out to be.
Owls?
Yeah, he made an animated movie a couple years back. It was called Guardians of Gahul.
That's right. He did make that crap. That was really weird. I have no idea what that was all about. Here's the thing. I don't actually really have a problem with Snyder, just in the sense of, if he does his own thing, I kind of like Sucker Punch a little bit. 300 was great for what it was, because, it should be over the top. I think superhero movies should never be over the top. They should be more grounded, because they're inherently dumb. It's a bunch of people in spandex punching each other. You've got to bring that down to the real world for it to be palatable for people. And unfortunately, Snyder is a 12-year-old boy with ADD, and he found his dad's Playboy collection, and he just put it on screen.
Well, we all have our dreams. At least he's following them. It seems to me like the big complaint a lot of people have is that the movie is basically just trying to recapture the magic of the Avengers so much that it just kind of comes off as a shameless wannabe. So do you think that's an accurate and apt description of the movie?
Oh, yeah. I think when you look at the way that they use the parademons versus how Avengers used the invading horde, just as just mindless crap that you could just kill and be like, oh no, they're not people, they're just bugs. You can just punch them. It's fine. Don't worry about killing them. But again, Avengers was really about Loki opening up a portal for Thanos to send things, this horde of people through. But, Loki had been established through multiple movies as this really clever, mischievous bad guy. Justice League was just like, oh yeah, here's this guy, we call him Steppenwolf. He used to be here once upon a time, and now he's back. Oh, we beat him. And I go, okay. It's like World War II without any of the drama. Like, who wants to watch that?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because now the guy who actually made the really good Batman movies is making movies about World War II, so full circle.
God damn. I haven't seen a lot of the big Hollywood stuff, but Dunkirk really was a spectacular piece of filmmaking. My hat's off to Nolan on that one.
Yeah, that's been my favorite movie of the year by a mile. I can't remember a year where one movie has been that miles ahead of everything that came out. If it doesn't win an Oscar, I think we should write.
Oh, that was one of the few films I've seen in a while where I would say he took a risk. He went out there and he just made a movie that was a nonstop sprint, essentially, for an hour and a half or whatever. It was not conventional storytelling, but it was so well done. Such an important part of the world. And, World War II is easy to mind for heroic actions, but there's just no shortage of amazing stories of human beings doing incredible things. So, yeah, you got to give it up to Nolan on that one.
That's kind of weird. You see sort of like a 180-degree turnaround there, because the really good Christopher Nolan movie isn't about superheroes. It's about people who are very human, who are very frail and can be easily killed compared to Justice League, where everybody's pretty much invincible.
Yeah, no, there is obviously a very stark contrast. Although when you look at Nolan's entire career, even as Batman, it's a very human take on Batman. It's not a surprise that it's so awesome. I think Nolan may be the best director out there right now. I can't think of anybody that's probably as good as him. So I just hope he keeps doing whatever he wants to do. And it seems so far that everything he touches is gold. So Christopher Nolan, since I know that you're listening, keep doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe a couple years down the line, you'll get some more great DC properties to resurrect from the dead. That's all we can hope for. And
yeah, I don't know. Let's just have a. I don't know what I would want Nolan to do next, but whatever it is, it's going to be awesome.
Okay, I have like a really unorthodox idea. I think you should do a live-action version of Mask of the Phantasm.
That's different. He won't do it, but that would be interesting, at least.
I think that one has a lot of potential, but I'm iffy on that one. But yeah, going back to Justice League, the movie as is, the ensemble cast, I think, was probably the really big problem for me, because I just didn't think they gelled together. They didn't really play off one another like they do in the Avengers. And of course, you got the standalone characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman. You're introducing Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg. So how did you feel about the way the new characters were implemented into the overall narrative here?
Yeah, they forced it. Marvel had a decade leading up to the Avengers, and DC had like 3 or 4 years. It's basically one movie, 2 movies. and only one of them was really good. You know, Marvel had all these great films. You're like, oh wow, we know who these guys are. This is gonna be fun and great. And oh, I've always wanted to see what Iron Man would be like with Captain America. How would Captain America deal with the Hulk? Oh wow, that's really great. Cap said Hulk, smash, and that was awesome. And we saw, oh, Hulk fought Loki, and he said puny god. Oh, that was great. But nobody walked into this going, I can't wait to see Cyborg talk to Aquaman. Well, we don't know who either one of these guys are. They're not developed. They're not established characters. Who gives a crap about either one of them, let alone how they play off of one another? And these are ensemble films, and it was an ensemble movie, but nobody gave a crap about the ensemble.
Yeah, when you look at the DC universe, I mean, you have a lot of really good supporting characters. You got your Blue Beetles and your Guy Gardners and your Lobos. And I really think including Aquaman and Cyborg were kind of big missteps. But it did give me my favorite scene in the entire movie, and that's when Wonder Woman goes to Cyborg's house and literally tells him the only reason he's hired is because of affirmative action.
It's always good when the woman tells the black, you know, we know what we're here for. You're here so nobody feels like they're racist. I'm here for some eye candy. Oh, we're getting a payday out of it, dude. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, that seems to be kind of the popular milieu in Hollywood nowadays. Is movies about powerful white women telling their black sidekicks what to do.
Well, I mean, it is a classic trope of the black man knowing his place in the world and white women putting him in that place. But it doesn't really matter because as a white man, I look at it and go, well, you're both below me right now because even in the Justice League, it was Superman at the end of the day who is so much better than everyone else. Doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you're a black, if you're a half fish, Superman owns your ass.
And once again, I have to remember the name of the program is This May or May Not Be Satire. Just to have that firmly established moving forward. But yeah, speaking of white women and super powerful Caucasian illegal immigrants, it seems to me that the big three of the DC universe, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, work very well as standalone characters when they're isolated in their own little universe. I mean, they've all been in really good movies before, but I think when you're merging them together, especially this big ensemble cast, you kind of lose the sort of idiosyncratic qualities of all of them. So, how did you think the big three fared in their characterization in this movie?
I think that everything they did sucked, which is terrible because, like, Tom King is currently writing Batman, the comic book, and he's just did a 2-issue story with Batman and Superman kind of hanging out, and it's amazing. And Batman and Superman work so well with this night and day, positive and negative, cynical and optimist. There's a great relationship there to mine. You throw in Wonder Woman, I think that can also work. But this is just poorly written garbage. I don't think Ben Affleck is necessarily a horrible Batman, but he's got some of the worst stories and worst motivations you can imagine. They kind of hint that maybe him and Wonder Woman have a little thing. Oh, Alfred is kind of hinting, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, Batman, you want to have sex with an Amazonian goddess? But then that doesn't go anywhere. And this is the second movie in a row where they kind of winked at us and be like, I bet Batman and Wonder Woman were like the bum uglies. But they didn't do it. It doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. You know, they like, oh, let's just, like, the whole scene where, like, they say, we got the big ultimate weapon we can bring down Superman. And it was Lois Lane. Oh, Superman was cured by love. But who gives a crap? We don't know who these characters are. You know, Amy Adams is an incredible actress. I think Henry Cavill is a great Superman. But Snyder has just destroyed any semblance of chemistry between the two. Like, just take both of them and throw them in an embassy suites for a weekend so they can learn to be with each other, for Pete's sake.
And another really weird thing about the movie is between having white stripes in the soundtrack and the cinematography and the kind of clunky dialogue and the very obtuse CGI, to me it really felt like a movie that came from 2007. It felt like a 10-year-old product. So, do you think the film also had that kind of weird, like, post-dated quality to it?
Oh, for sure. And I say this as a guy who loves the White Stripes. I would. One of the highlights of my life was seeing them in concert. I'm really glad that I did. But I'm going to be 35 in a month and a half. Like, I'm an old man. Play something modern. I don't care if it's Wiz Khalifa or Run the Jewel. Like, Black Panther's coming out in February. They have their soundtrack. Part of it's done by Run the Jewel. Like, that's a big, really hip, cool, rap duo. Like, that's what the kids listen to. And so I think it's going to play really well. It's got this social justice warrior, Black Lives Matter feel to it. And even if I don't agree with it, I can respect the fact that Marvel knows, oh yeah, this is something we should, focus on. Whereas DC they just gave it to Snyder and said, hey, Zach, do whatever you want, man. We thought Sucker Punch was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he's like, I like the White Stripes, and I like to have a cut every 1.5 seconds in my movies. And let's add a little bit of darkness to everything. And let's mute the color palette. And then they're surprised when the movie sucks.
And of course, being a film heavily inspired by the better Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, you had plenty of cameos. You had 2 post-credit stingers. So what did you think of what they did there with the whole Soup's Flash race and the introduction of Deathstroke?
I mean, introducing Deathstroke, I know why they did it. And again, they're like the dork that saw the cool guy do something and they try to mimic it, but it doesn't work because they're still a dork. Like, oh, they had a post-credit thing. Yeah, Marvel does it, and they, at the end of, I think it was Captain America, the post-credit was Loki showing up. And DC introduces an entirely new character. You can't do that. Like, I'm sure maybe Marvel did, but after Iron Man, it was Tony Stark sitting there, and Sam Jackson, Nick Fury, shows up and says, hey, I got this idea. It's like, oh, that's really cool. And after, I think it was the end of, I don't know if it was Hulk or one of them, like Tony Stark sat down at a bar or something and talked to a guy. He's like, oh, wow, that's a big cameo. And then DC pulls out Deathstroke. It's not a character anybody in the world has ever heard of. I've read comics my whole life. I know who he is, but I don't really give a shit care at all about Deathstroke. Oh, he's Deadpool, but he's not funny. And why would you want to watch an unfunny Deadpool?
So yeah, in the DC universe, you've got Deathstroke, you've got Deadshot. People are not going to be confused about those two.
I even forgot about that. It says a lot when I thought Suicide Squad was a better movie than Justice League.
Yeah, that is probably the most condemnatory anti-praise I've heard about the movie so far.
I'll stand by that. And some of it's because Suicide Squad had better. I don't want to say better, but they had much more charismatic actors. Like Margot Robbie just can hold a scene. Will Smith, despite his weird stuff with Scientology, is still Will Smith. Like, that dude is a movie star, so when he's on screen, it matters. But Ben Affleck, he ain't that. Gal Gadot I love her, but they just completely minimized her, and no one cares about whoever the black guy was.
Yeah, were there any major Easter eggs that people may have missed out on? Obviously, in the battle flashback, you had Green Lantern, and I think it may have been Black Lightning showing up, but I could be off.
Yeah, the only thing that I remember is Green Lantern. Something that's also, they had talked about it, I think it was Steppenwolf said, like, there's no Kryptonians and there's no lanterns. It's like, oh, they mentioned the lanterns. Which it's fine. Like, that's the kind of good Easter egg you should do. Like, that was the only thing they did right, really, which is mention it, tease it, and then move on. Don't focus on it. Don't hover on it. Don't turn to the camera and be like, hey, everybody, this is our cool little wink, wink, wink. It's like, no. Trust your audience not to be stupid.
So
but, if anybody liked this movie, they probably already were stupid.
Yeah, I think we can all agree the movie's a pretty big disappointment, especially for hardcore, comic nerds like us that have been waiting for this forever. So, moving forward with the DCCU, what do you think the biggest change should be as we transition from this movie, which was a debacle, to the inevitable Justice League 2?
A new writer, new director, and new producer. Whomever is you have to start all over, get rid of everybody involved. And even Joss Whedon, I like Joss Whedon. I think he would do a really good movie. But I would rather err on the side of caution and get everybody who did anything with Justice League or Batman vs. Superman, get them away. And that goes all the way to the top. I actually think I really think they should just turn it over to Patty Jenkins, because she's the only person, she's literally the only human being that has made this crap work. And, if it worked for one person, let's see if we can make it work for more.
Yeah, I mean, the Me Too movement would really kind of love that decision.
Well, it would be something, and I'm not obviously, I'm not a big, rah, let's just, affirmative action, give it to the woman just because she's a woman type. But Patty Jenkins earned her stuff. Wonder Woman is a really good movie. And she nailed it basically from start to finish. And I think, hell, well, you did that. Let's see what else you can do. She knows how to tell a story. Zack Snyder doesn't know how to tell a story. So give it to someone that does.
And is there any particular direction you'd like to see the DC Cinematic Universe take to improve as we move to the next wave of movies? Like any sort of major story arc you think should be building to?
No. That's the problem. DC doesn't have classic stories like that. They don't have classic villains. They've got one or two at best. And I really do think you could just pretty much take any villain or any story, and if you do it well, it'll translate to film. Because, again, there's been, 75 years of comic book stories. They basically just need one to make it really good. I'm sure that you can find something, but it's not Marvel, and it's not a cohesive universe. It's always been it's basically a collection of hyper individuals who are, Batman. It's not Batman, like Wonder Woman and Superman. What's a big difference there? Like, they both are really strong. They're invulnerable. They can essentially fly. Oh, Superman can make things freeze with his breath and shoot eye beams, but Wonder Woman's got a sword, a shield, a lasso of truth, and she's willing to kill. They're kind of the same. I don't know if they all work real well with each other. I mean, they work magnificently on their own, but only for one or two stories. So, again, I will just reiterate, say, give it to Patty Jenkins. Hashtag me too.
And, obviously, us being big MMA guys, the comparison point between MCU and the DCCU, I guess it would have to be the UFC versus Bellator, where you have, the 800-pound gorilla who's doing it better than everybody, and the pale imitator. So what exactly did the Marvel Cinematic Universe do correctly that so far the DC Cinematic Universe hasn't?
They had patience. Marvel had 10-plus years leading up to the Avengers. I don't know if 10-plus, but they had probably about a decade leading up to the Avengers. But they had movies that were good on their own, and you didn't have to... If you just wanted to watch Iron Man, just watch it. If you watch the first Thor, it's like, they had Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh directed the first Thor. It's actually a really good semi-Shakespearean film. It stands on its own and it's kind of connected to the other universe, to the larger universe, if you want it to be, But if you don't want it to be, it's fine. It doesn't. You don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to know what's going on. Whereas DC, from the beginning, they worked backwards, and it doesn't work that way. You have to. They didn't tell a story. Marvel told a story, and they. You open a book. You buy a book, and you open it up, and you just start reading. You don't know what the beginning is going to entail. You don't know the middle. You don't know the ending. But if it's good enough, you trust that the writer will take you on a journey, and you stick with it. DC basically told everybody, hey, here's what the end is going to be. Isn't it really cool? Don't you want to see how we get there? Whereas Marvel said, hey, we're going to take you on a journey here. We think you're going to like it. Come with us.
Yeah, do you think there's any sort of secret sauce as to why the MCU movies have such a great ensemble base compared to the DCCU just being very standalone character driven?
Yeah, Marvel allows them to be characters. Iron Man had a trilogy. Captain America had a trilogy. Thor had a trilogy. They had, Hulk and Hawkeye are kind of characters that appear here and there. Whereas with, DC, from the moment that Man of Steel came out, it was like, okay, we're going to lead up to Justice League. And Batman in that universe does not exist on his own. Wonder Woman did exist on her own, and it was an awesome movie, and it had nothing to do with the larger world, and everyone liked it. And I think that's not a coincidence. If they did a Batman movie in that universe, and it didn't have anything to do with anybody else, I bet people would like it. But as it stands, we have a universe in which the canon entails Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, Wonder Woman, and Suicide Squad. They're all technically part of the same universe, but it doesn't work. Look, what does Suicide Squad have to do with any of this stuff, except for Batman showed up for a little bit, but it was just garbage.
And one of the things about reading Marvel versus DC is there's obviously sort of some tonal and some attitudinal differences. It seems like the MCU and Marvel Comics in general are better at being a little lighter, a little frothier, a little bit more comedic, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek. Whereas I think DC's strength has always been being a little bit grimmer, darker, and, with the case of the Vertigo comics, a little bit more poetic and adult. So what do you think the DC cinematic universe should do to diverge from what the MCU is doing? What would benefit them?
Again, we kind of gone around it a lot, but just DC needs to just trust your director, trust your writer, do a story that works, and I don't want to say don't overthink it, but this stuff is it's simple. They're gimmies. You just tell stories and don't just make something good. Which, again, easier said than done, I know. But don't try to create the biggest, best, and greatest thing ever. Try to create a bunch of really, really great things with a bit of an eye towards the final picture. But just make something people care about. Make sure we like the characters first. And they haven't done it yet.
Now, are there any DC characters, maybe some old DC arcs that you think should be implemented in the DC Cinematic Universe?
I cannot think of any, which is sad. I know there's some really great stories out there, but I don't know if they translate to film. I think the only one I would love to see was Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman. I would adore that. It's one of my favorite comic book series. Maybe my favorite of all time. I love it. It's so well written and the art is outstanding. Mm-hmm. But it's just a Superman story. And, Batman obviously has a ton of great stories. And Wonder Woman, they already did a great movie with her. And again, it kind of goes back to the fact that individually they're really great, but there's not a lot of classic Justice League stories. The Avengers have had a lot of classic stories. in stories we haven't seen on film. They have Kang. Kang is an amazing villain in the Avengers history. He goes back in time. He screws with them. They've had Ultron, a great villain in the history of the Avengers. The Avengers have a number of great villains, whereas Justice League just doesn't.
Okay, now All-Star Superman, that was one where Bizarro World had its own Bizarro, right?
All-Star Superman was Grant Morrison's 12-issue limited run that was kind of out of continuity, and he just told I think the greatest Superman stories ever, where it was essentially the end of Superman's life, but he did all these heroic feats, and he beat Lex Luthor, and he did the best take on Bizarro ever, and I'll say this as somebody that hates Bizarro. I just can't stand it. I won't read Bizarro. As soon as I see him on the comic book pages, I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do this because I'm not going to try to translate all this horse crap. But, Bizarro definitely appeared there with All-Star Superman.
Yeah, and it had the laboratory guy with the rainbow coat.
Yep, they had Dr. Quantum, and, Superman restarts the sun, does all kinds of great stuff, has all these heroic feats. He has a day with Lois where she could have superpowers, but just for a day, he replicates his entire DNA. Like, Superman is really, really super in that series, in that book. It's just so awesome.
That's probably my second favorite Superman story. For me, it's the season for Superman. Superman for All Seasons is my absolute favorite.
Superman for All Seasons by Alan Moore. That's outstanding as well. I can't argue against that. Again, there's a lot of really good individual stories to be told with these characters. Just not too many great stories involving the whole team. And some of that's also, there is no team. It just doesn't exist. And even when you put Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman together, they're the core of a team. Well, who's the leader? Their dynamic doesn't work. With Avengers, everybody will accept Captain America as the leader. That's just his personality, and we accept Tony Stark and is kind of this smart-ass, really smart guy on the side. But you look at Justice League. Well, are you gonna say Batman isn't the smart guy who should lead everything? No, that's his whole gimmick. His gimmick is, I'm really smart and I know everything. But Superman's gimmick is, I'm the greatest hero ever. Obviously, he should lead. And yet, Wonder Woman came on, and everybody loves Wonder Woman because she's been awesome. So they don't have, the dynamic is not a true team dynamic.
Yeah, I'm still just waiting for my Lobo and Plastic Man buddy cop comedy.
Well, don't get too greedy.
So, if we're going to talk about the DC Cinematic Universe, I think it's only fair that we talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because we got a ton of stuff going on with that, with the big news with Disney acquiring Fox. So, we got Infinity War coming up here in a couple of months. We're trying to get ahead of the 8-ball a little bit. It's going to be huge. It's going to make a bajillion dollars at the box office. We've been building this thing up for literally a decade now. Will it live up to the hype?
Probably not. But I don't think it's Marvel's fault so much as nerds like me will just build it up as being like, this is going to be the once in a lifetime. We've never seen anything like this. And it's true. It's a movie that's a decade plus in the making. We've really never seen that before with this kind of story. Give all credit to Kevin Feige, the executive producer who's ushered this whole thing through. Even Star Wars is only on episode 8, which I will see tomorrow. But it's relatively simple. A couple of characters. It's about 4 or 5 characters in total. Marvel's had all of these characters in all their own movies, and it somehow has come together. And you see how it's not easy. They've done it, but DC didn't, and a lot of other people have tried to do it, but it doesn't work.
Now, even though it's called Infinity War, it's actually supposedly based more in a root of the Infinity Gauntlet, which came out in 1991. A great Jim Starlin crossover. And of course, if you read the Infinity Gauntlet, and you should have if you're a good human being, spoiler, pretty much everybody dies. I mean, it's pretty much down to like Adam Warlock and Silver Surfer against Thanos. So, do you think the MCU will have the huevos to actually go that route and just start killing off people left and right?
I actually do. I think they're going to kill off Iron Man and Captain America during both of the movies. Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. are essentially done with their contracts. They've told their stories. I think Downey Jr. has been Iron Man in already 5 or 6 movies is a semi-lead or lead. Probably 8 or 9 is a kind of like a cameo. He's done his tour of duty, so to speak. And Chris Evans is at the end of his contract. And it's just a perfect point to restart everything, and they have the Infinity Gems. I think they'll probably use the Time Gem or something like that to bring in, like, oh, nope, Captain America actually looks like this guy. Everybody, it's blonde guy number 2 over here. Let's just watch him do things. And they'll find some guy with a goatee to be Johnny Depp is now Captain America or whatever it'll be. But it's kind of, they need to do something. They have to kill off at least one of those 2, if not both of them, to give stakes to the film and to make sure that everybody who watches the next 10 years of movies can remember, oh yeah, that guy died. Like, it's really difficult for studios to kill off characters, and I get it. You know, these people make money, they're properties, but when characters die, if it's done at the right time in the right movie, that will really have a lasting effect on people forever. Like, they will start talking about these deaths as this pivotal, legendary moment. This, you know, kind of like when Han Solo died, people will remember that. Like, that mattered. It drove the story forward. And I think they have a chance to do that with both Cap and Iron Man.
And obviously, Phase 3, I said it was Phase 2 last time, but I did my research. We're going into Phase 3 after Infinity War. So how do you think they'll close the door on Infinity War and then kickstart the next 10 years of Marvel movies?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it fell into their lap. I had no idea what they were going to do. I thought, well, we had a great run, and maybe we'll restart or do something else. And then all of a sudden, Disney bought the rest of my childhood, and we're going to have Fantastic Four, we're going to have X-Men, and those 2 properties alone will carry the next decade of Marvel movies. All of a sudden, they can bring mutants into the picture. You can say, well, how would Captain America deal with the emergence of mutants? How would he, you know, how does the world handle an intellect like Reed Richards? And what do you do when Galactus shows up in a decade? It's really fascinating stuff, and Marvel's nailed it so far, and I bet they'll nail this stuff as well.
Yeah, it seems to me like Galactus would be the obvious endgame for the next 10 years. But in between, you got all the great new villains coming in. You got Doctor Doom, you got Magneto, you got the Sentinels, Apocalypse, just all these great characters just coming in and migrating over. So we're probably not going to be running out of Marvel material for another 2 decades, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and you know, I don't want to crap on everything Bryan Singer did. He did some good movies. He also raped some children. These things happen.
They do.
But, you know, we take the good with the bad. But yeah, I think people are ready for a new Magneto. I mean, I love Apocalypse. But yeah, exactly. They have so many great villains. I think that's one of the things, again, DC doesn't. DC has some great. They do have great villains, but Marvel's got some great high-level, omega-level villains. Like, you could do a story where Magneto is the ultimate big bad guy you have to worry about. Because there was one story where he tried to reverse the poles on the Earth. And it would, you know, kill everybody and blah, blah, blah. But you're like, oh, I can kind of see how that might work. And I could also see where if he planned things, he's got so much power in a unique way that everybody else would, have to deal with it. Same with Doctor Doom. Everybody in Marvel at one time or another has been like, shoot, Doctor Doom is here. We all have to pay attention. You can go with Galactus. Obviously, the man eats planets for fun. That's an awesome villain. So there's so many really great villains. It's almost not fair because Marvel can just play with all of them together, and we're gonna get to see, I think, especially the Fantastic Four. We've had some really good X-Men movies, and I'm sorry to all those 14-year-olds out there. I'm glad that it happened because Singer made 2 really great movies. We have not had a great Fantastic Four movie yet, and we definitely should. And we could, and we will, I think. And I have faith in Kevin Feige.
Well, I mean, we had The Incredibles. That kind of counts.
Honestly, that's a really great point, which is, look at The Incredibles. It's Fantastic Four, basically. Except for they didn't have the same powers, but it was still really entertaining and fun. And somehow Marvel has made, 3 Fantastic Four movies now in the past modern era? And they were all absolute it wasn't Marvel, I'm sorry. It was Fox that made them. And they were all absolute garbage. So I suspect that Marvel, now having control of everything, will make movies that everybody goes, oh, wow, that's awesome. I want to be Reed Richards for Halloween. Give me a Thing mask or something like that.
It's amazing to me that the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie is not the worst Fantastic Four movie.
No, it's actually
that might be the best
compared to the other ones.
Yeah, so that's the way life turns out. Now, at this point, does Disney own the entire Marvel canon, or are there still some holdouts, like in the far reaches they can't go to quite yet?
They don't own Venom, and I think that Namor might be in weird limbo with somebody, and Man-Thing, not that anybody gives a crap, but essentially, and I say this as somebody that loves Namor, I have Imperious Rex tattooed on my chest, actually. I love him so much. But all the characters that anybody really cares about, they're all under Disney and Disney's control now, so all the good stuff is there.
And the big concern from a lot of fans is obviously with the last couple of X-Men movies, and especially Deadpool, we've seen these properties go into, more adult R-rated fare. So do you think Disney, trying to maintain that family-friendly, kind of quasi-Nazi-related image, will be a little bit hesitant to go with more adult-oriented fare?
Probably. I don't know if we'll see Disney do an R-rated X-Men movie like Logan or anything like that. But I think that some of the characters, like for Deadpool, they'll leave that alone. Be like, okay, it's an R-rated character, and probably a couple of other guys like Punisher. And we even look at it right now. They own Punisher, and that was an incredibly violent, almost, I don't know if it'd be an R rating anymore because I don't know what the ratings mean. But it's a very violent series here on Netflix. So I think they'll probably go there. I think they're more like a soft R or a hard PG-13. And I think that's fine. I don't think you need to have everybody swearing and dropping F-bombs and having naked breasts everywhere. And it makes me sound like an old man, but if Shakespeare didn't do it, why does Disney need to?
And are there any quasi-obscure Marvel characters or story arcs I'd like to see get presented in the MCU shortly?
Nobody that really comes to mind. I'm sure there's somebody out there, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head.
The Marvel pantheon is so deep. I mean, you have so many really sort of niche franchises that I think could be great if you have the right director. Like, I'd love to see Squadron Supreme. I would love to see the Skrull Kill Crew maybe get a shot somewhere. Power Pack even has potential, so who knows? I mean, pretty much anybody will buy anything that has Marvel on it, so here's to hoping.
I mean, look, they made Guardians of the Galaxy one of the biggest franchises of all time, and no one gave a crap about those guys. So, yeah, Power Pack, you're probably going to be making billions of dollars pretty soon.
Just don't let Bryan Singer direct it for the safety of all involved.
Actually, I think I want to see Bryan Singer direct Runaways. A bunch of at-risk youth teens with no parental guidance around one of Hollywood's most notorious gay rapists.
What's the worst that can happen?
AIDS.
I'm not even going to try to top that one. Like, I'm having to hold in my laughter on the inside, but that was just perfect timing. All right, well, you really can't top a good AIDS joke involving child rape, so I'm just going to try to wrap it up here a little bit. I guess really the only thing to kind of do now is do our little over-unders for the two big pressing issues heading into the Infinity War coming up. Number one, what do you think the box office over-under will be? And additionally, what is the over-under on Disney getting powerful enough that they eventually do buy out Time Warner and acquire DC over the next decade?
I would say the over-under on Infinity War is $2 billion, and I will take the over by a little bit. And I don't know if Disney will buy Time Warner, but I do believe that eventually Disney will own DC. It just will fit, and they'll have this awesome, like, Superman and Mickey Mouse, and they will be these perfect caretakers going forward. They will steward this just like they've taken care of all their properties so far. I don't know when it'll happen, but if it happens within the next 10 years, I will not be surprised at all. Disney will own everything, and eventually we will realize that the 1,000-year reign of the Third Reich started with Walt Disney.
Mm-hmm. Well, what a time to be alive. That's all I can say. Well, Mr. Coughlin, it's a pleasure having you on the program. As always, I'll let you wrap up things. Anything you want to say heading into the holidays for us?
Well, I hope everybody goes to halfguarded.com, but more than that, I just want to say Merry Christmas, everybody.
I think that's a hate crime now to say that.
I am a hateful man. Merry Christmas. Happy birthday, Jesus.
The original mutant. We have to state that.
Look, he walked on water. He transformed food. He saved all of our sins. He created the modern world. His teachings essentially have influenced Judeo-Christian tradition, which led to the end of slavery in the modern world, all freedom, billions of dollars, healthcare, good drugs. I'll say it right here and now. Jesus was a pretty good dude.
And that's the whole point of everything. I love these holiday specials. It's always a hoot to have you around. All right, we'll just wrap it up here. Glad to have you on the program. We'll be talking about comic books a whole lot more. And if you want to hear us talk about more esoteric stuff like this, kind of get outside of our comfort zone, we'd love to do it. Just let us know, and might make this a regular feature. All right, well, this is Jay Swift signing off. Like Mr. Coughlin, wish you a Merry Christmas, a festive Kwanzaa. Is Hanukkah still going on?
No, it just ended.
Okay, well, nobody cares about Hanukkah. But just enjoy, the rest of the year. And we got UFC coming up. Football season about to head to the playoffs. So we're going to be occupied with our bread and circuses for a while. So just enjoy life while you still can. It's going to be great.